Begin the current Daf Masechta Shabbos Daf Kufchav Gimel. Begin on the second line down at the top of the Yommi. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion regarding the laws of muktzah, specifically those kelim that if they could be used, let's say gufoy or mekayim. Shiur is co-sponsored by Kazakh and Yecheskel to anytime Daf Achayim. Some of these we're going to speak about today's Daf are regarding the halacha, the opening mishnah of this parak kelim, regarding breaking open nuts with a hammer. The question is, what type of hammer are we talking about? Can it be a blacksmith, a goldsmith, or a spice maker's hammer? Could be used for this purpose for cracking open nuts, or is it only allowed to be a hammer that's designated for cracking open nuts? Additionally, Rav Nachman seemed to have contradictory psakim, a psak, whether it's permissible to move muktzah in the indirect way, what's called tiltul min hatzad. We're going to see regarding that as a discussion on today's daf. Okay. Additionally, regarding the status of a needle whose eye was removed, regarding to the halachas of Shabbos and halachas of Tumah, we're going to be comparing these two halachas of Shabbos and Tumah regarding if that's considered a vessel anymore, because once part of it breaks, do we still consider it as a status? Additionally, machlek is whether one can straighten the dislocated limbs of a baby on Shabbos. Is that considered a problem about tikkun gavra? Is that like fixing a person on Shabbos, or is that the normal way of a person? Additionally, two versions of the historical development of the halachas of muktzah. How did it start? Muktzah is a halacha derabanan. How did that happen, and what was actually the process till it became the halacha l'maisa as it is today? So important in terms of the concept we're learning about today, what's called tiltul min hatzad. Tiltul min hatzad is moving something in the indirect way, which that halachically rule is a permitted way to move muktzah. Additionally, the concept known as pshutei kli'etz is that a wooden vessel that's smooth is not makabel tumah. A kli shel machal iser is a vessel that its primary usage is for something that's prohibited, let's say like a hammer. Generally is used for baina, for building, which is therefore it makes it into a muktzah item. And the halacha of mecham letzel is that if you have a muktzah item and you just want to protect it, someone actually asked me this Arab Shabbos, he had some type of these razors, these electric scooters, and he knew it was supposed to rain. Says, could I take it inside? I said, that's mecham letzel. This is a muktzah item, and you want it just to protect it from the sun to the shade, and that's something that's forbidden to be done. We're going to go to Daf and set the Shabbos. Like we said, Kuf Chav Gimel, second line Dam. We're in the middle of a discussion where we had said in the Mishnah, Neitla Adam Kornus. We said a person could take a hammer, Levatzei Besa Guys, and to go ahead and crack open nuts. And we had many different cases in the Mishnah regarding muktzah items, and we said, you're allowed to use it because you're using it for a permitted type of utility. Now, regarding that, we had a machlekes. Was it specifically by designated hammer, which is a klish malachti leheter? Yeah, if it's a nutcracker, you could use such a hammer, a nutcracker, to crack open nuts. What the inference is that opinion holds. But a klish malachti leiser, if it was, let's say, a regular hammer, that's a builder hammer, it cannot be used with tzarech gufi. You can't use it for a permitted utility on Shabbos. Or we had another opinion, which is the one we're going to ask on right now, that held no, even a blacksmith's hammer, which is klish malachti leiser, is generally used for prohibited utility during the weekday. It's a muktzah item. You could use it, let's say, if you want to crack open a nut on Shabbos, you could take a regular muktzah hammer and use it to crack open what's called l'tzayrech gufay, which we rule that that's actually the halacha. You could take something that's a muktzah item and use it for a permitted utility. That's what the Gemara's middle discussion and asked on that opinion. Abaya asked on Rabba. Again, Rabba is the one that holds that you could take a kli shel malachti leiser, let's say blacksmith's hammer, and use it l'tzayrech gufay, use it for a permitted utility like crack. You're allowed to crack open them on Shabbos. So you're allowed to use the prohibited hammer for that on Shabbos from the following brisa. The brisa says meducha, a mortar, which is used to grind inside of it garlic. So it says the brisa as follows: Im yesh b'shum, if there's some garlic inside of the mortar, so matam leisa, then you can move the mortar, because since you have the permitted garlic inside of it, that will make it permitted to move that mortar. But v'mlav, if there's no garlic inside of it, say ein matam leisa, you're not allowed to move the mortar, let's say, because you want to sit on it. Because since the primary utility of a mortar is for grinding, which is a moleches is, you're not allowed to grind on Shabbos because of teichin, so you're not allowed to move it. So you see, not like Rabbah, it's a kli shel malachti leiser. It's something that's generally used for a permitted thing. You're not allowed to use it, l'tzayrech gufi, you're not allowed to use it for a permitted thing, which is just to sit on it. So Amalei, so that Rabbah says to Abaya, Hamani, who's the Tana of this Bryce? Is Reb Nechemiah. It's not difficult to me, it's going like a different Tana. It's like Reb Nechemiah. Dama that he says, in kli nitel, a vessel cannot be moved, il l'tzayrech tashmishay, only for its designated utility. Of Nachman is from the most stringent interpretations of muktzah. He says you can't use, let's say, a regular non-muktzah item if it's not for what it's designated for. It has to be for what it's designated for. You can't move a fork for, let's say, using it for, let's say, you want to play with it. No, it has to be specifically for eating. It has to be for what it's made for. So here the mortar, it's not made for sitting on, so therefore you can't move it. But the Rabbanan, they would hold that a klish machtel issa, like in our Mishnah, you are allowed to use l'tzara gufa. And I think Gemara continues to ask, Abai asked on Rabbah from the Eisvei, from the following Mishnah Masechtas Be'ah.
It's not designated for that.
What? Right.
It's not designated.
Right, so therefore he Reb Nechemia would hold, and they discussed that every klish machtel issa, according to Reb Nechemia, should be forbidden to remove because it's designated right. But he's not going Reb Nechemia. He's saying that price is like Reb Nechemia, and therefore you can't move it. But the Rabbanan, like in our Mishnah, would hold that you could move it. Now the Gemara, so the Gemara asks for the Mishnah Masechtas Be'ah. Mishnah says, and it's obvious Rashi does not have the gears of the parentheses, but we'll read it anyway. It's part of the Mishnah. The Bashamei say, "Ein loiklon esa eli." You're not allowed to move the pestle. That's the other half of the mortar. You see the primitive pictures they had. The mortar is like this receptacle, and the pestle is like this little piece that you smash the things inside. So you can't move the pestle lekatzav l'basar to chop meat on it. Or bisil materin and bisil permitted, meaning you can't use it because it's a muktzah item. But bisil says v'simchas yamtiv, you're allowed to go ahead and chop the meat on it. Now, but this is the way the question's from. V'shavin, both Bisham and Bisil agree, although they disagree regarding moving the pestle to chop meat on it in yamtiv. They agree shin katzav l'basar. If you already used it for chopping the meat on it for your tzarech of simchas yamtiv, meaning you don't have the excuse anymore of simchas yamtiv. You already used it to chop the meat. You're done. Sha'asol tavli, that you now go ahead and move the pestle anymore. Because this that Beisil permits you to move it in originally is because of simchas yamtiv. Once that's already done, you don't have the excuse. So you see that because the pestle is a klish malachta le'issa, what's it usually used for? Like we said, for grinding the different grains or the peels of the wood which you use to tan the leathers, that therefore it's a klish malachta le'issa, you're not to move it even though you want to use it. L'tzarech guf, you want to use it for some type of permitted activity on Yom Tov, you want to mix something, whatever it is, you're not to move it. That's not like Rabbah. Says the Gemara Sabar, so Rabbah thought, he was going to answer like he did in the previous price. He couldn't Nechemia. He was going to give him like that was going to be his joker answer. He's going to say, "Oh, okay, it's like Nechemia." Nechemia holds it as not what its designated utility. It's forbidden. But even the Shamal Hadam Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg Rab. Once he heard the following teaching of Rav, he didn't have to say it's like Nechemia. He was able to say it's like everyone. What was Rav's teaching? He says, "Hakol everyone, even the Rabbanim who disagree with Nechemia, and they hold no, you could use a utility not only for its designated earmark intention." Still, they're all maidim, they all agree by the following items that it is going to be muktzah and you cannot move a l'tzarech gufa and mekame. What are these? This is actually a whole new category of muktzah called muktzah machmas chisar and kiss, which is that you totally set aside that no one's going to touch it because of it's very expensive or it could get ruined easily, and because of the great loss of money, nobody touches it. What are they? So there's two interpretations of Rashi. One is besiche, that spindles, ziyari is the clothes presses, or Missouri are the mallets, meaning they're either vessels that are used by the dyers, which they dye things, make it coloring things. Or Rabbeinu Levi says that they're weavers' vessels. The sichi are the beams, the ziyari are those reeds that go in the warp threads, and Missouri are the upper and the lower kaivids, those are the beams that they get wrapped around. But be it as it may, whatever their tools are professionals. The keeping the kabbalah alayu, since people, the professional is very particular about them that they shouldn't get ruined and they shouldn't get bent. So meyachilu makom, so he designates a place for them, meaning that the word muktzah comes from the word of mekatzav, setting aside. He actively sets aside. No one goes near this. This is where Tati has his tools that he works with. Don't go into this room. Don't touch it. Doesn't want it to get ruined. So therefore, it's going to be muktzah. So hachanami. So that says Rabbi, the same is going to be over here. By this pestle and the mortar, miyachlu makom. He sets aside a place for them because they're what's called chesar and kiss, and therefore it's going to be us. It's not a difficulty on him. A regular klisha malachta iser, which is just a hammer. A hammer doesn't get ruined easily. You don't care if the kids go ahead and use it for something. So therefore, you could use l'tzarech gufa. Here, these cases, the pestle and the mortar, we were just asking the Raisa and the Mishnah. Rabbi says the reason why they cannot be used with tzarech gufa because they're set aside. He doesn't let anyone use it for any other ulterior motive, and therefore that's why it's going to be us. It's not difficult on Rabbi. Now, Itmar, up until now we had two different opinions on the previous daf regarding what type of hammer do we let. We had Rabbi Yehuda who lets only a klisha malachta leheter, and we had Rabba who lets even a klisha malachta leisser. Now the Gemara brings two different more opinions regarding this interpretation of our Mishnah. What type of hammer are we talking about to crack open the nuts and Shabbos? And he says the third interpretation. It says we're talking about the hammer of the goldsmith. Now, although a goldsmith is a little bit more particular about his hammer, that it should be smooth, because he's using thin sheets of gold, which obviously is more sensitive for the type of hammer that you're using. But still, Rashi explains, since you could fix it by banging it on the anvil, so you're not so particular about it. And therefore, even that type of a hammer, says Rabbi Yochanan, you could use on Shabbos, let's say, of gufa. And for sure, like let's say that of a blacksmith, like Rabbah, for sure he would agree that such a klitchel ma'achal iser could be used, let's say, of gufa on Shabbos. He's just adding even a bigger chiddush. Even such a hammer could be used on Shabbos. Now, Shema bar Abba, he says the greatest chiddush of it all. He says it's toma kornishal besamim. It's a hammer that's used for spices, to grind the spices. That's what sheninu, even that what type of hammer we're talking about. Because the Gemara explains, that's the final machlekes between these two amiram. Mandam, the one that says you could even use the hammer for the spices. Koshkin, there's a zahavim. For sure you could use one of gold, because as the Gemara is going to explain in the inverse. Mandam shel zahavim, one that says you could use the one of the gold. But regarding that the hammer that's used for spices, Kampanalai. He is more particular about it, because the hammer, like we said, the spices are very sensitive to the smell, and he doesn't want them to get ruined if you can use it for cracking open nuts, because the spices have to be pure, and therefore that actually he would agree that the Kodesh Shabbat he would hold actually would be forbidden, because it could ruin the delicate flavor of the spices. So those are the four different opinions that we had regarding what type of hammer. Either a nutcracker hammer, or a blacksmith's hammer, or a goldsmith's hammer, or even the spice maker's hammer. And each one of them is an added level in the chiddush about what type of hammer could you use, because like that last one, we said not everyone agreed could you use the spice maker's hammer, because that's very sensitive, and therefore he doesn't want to use it for other things. That might be muktzah even, l'tzayrech gufa, to use it for a permitted Shabbos utility on Shabbos. Now we can see with the halacha of the Mishnah that said other items that are really muktzah, but you could use them for a permitted activity on Shabbos, what's called the tzarech gufay. So the Mishnah said vesakush, the spindle, vesakarka, b'chulu, and the weavers read, these are things used by people that are weaving clothing. That we said that you could use it to stick into the peri. You could use it to use like a shish kebab. You can stick it in and eat with it. You could use like some type of an eating utensil. So therefore again, that's klishon mafkal iser. That's mutter l'tzarech gufay. You could use it for and that's as we rule halacha l'maisa. Now Tana in the brisa that paga, regarding a fig that has not fully ripened, shetamna b'tevin, that was stuck into straw, and the reason why it's sitting in straw, like some people put certain unripe fruits in a brown paper bag, you put it into the straw so that it should ripen. Now, straw itself is muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because it's set aside, they used to use it for making tit, for making lime, for making like a type of a cement, therefore it's a muktzah item. Or similar case of charara shetamna b'gachom, let's say you have a cake that's inside the coals. So it says the rice, it depends. If part of the cake or the fig is uncovered, then you could grab a hold of the uncovered part, because as Rashi explains, you're not even going to have what's called tiltul min hatzad over here. Tiltul min hatzad means to say that you're moving the muktzah indirectly. Here you don't have to lift up the straw at all. You're just going to pick up the uncovered part, and the straw is just going to fall by itself. So then mutl tatla. So then you're allowed to go ahead and move that fig or move that cake, which Taisus says. It just points out it has to be that you had in mind when you put in that fig originally that you were going to take it, because when you leave it there the whole Shabbos, it actually would be a basis of double aser. Actually would be supporting a forbidden thing, which is the muktzah, and therefore it just must be that you didn't plan on leaving it there the whole Shabbos, so it wasn't a basis, it's not a base for the straw, and additionally, it's not going to be a problem about moving muktzah. Now, but let's say there's no uncovered part, so asal tatli, you're not allowed to move the straw. The straw is muktzah. So therefore, sometimes you just can't get to something because a muktzah item. They talk about this in the freezers. When you have food, you might have some muktzah food in the way. Okay, so we might have a tayrim, let's say kufa mekayimai. But in general, you might something muktzah might be in the way. Here, if there's no uncovered part, you're not going to be able to move the straw to get to the fig. Now, Lazman Tadoyam, he says no, it's not a problem. Even if it's totally in the straw, you could get it. How could you get it? You take, which is the halacha of Mishnah that we're addressing now, you could take that spindle, you could take that weaver's reed and stick into the fig, and then take it out, and then the straw or the coals will fall by itself. So you're not moving it yourself, you're taking this out, and that's going to fall down by itself. Now, on that machlekes of Nachman, since halacha Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, the halacha follows like the lenient interpretation of Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg that you could go ahead and stick into the fig and have the straw fall by itself. Says the Gemara, remember the Sabra of Nachman, is that to say that Nachman holds, tilta min hatzad, what are you doing over here? I'm not moving the muktzah. but I'm moving it indirectly by moving the fig that's causing the straw to move. That indirectly moving loish mei tiltal, that's not considered moving, and therefore he rules like this opinion that says you're allowed to move it. But Rav Nachman himself says the following halacha: Hai puglo. Pugla is a radish that has already been detached from the ground, which was then put back into the ground as a way of storage, and part of it is still sticking out. Now it depends how it's sticking out from the ground. If it's milmalu lamata, in other words, if the upper part that's on the top is the wider part and the narrow part's on the bottom, so when you take out this radish, you're going to be taking out from the top part and the bottom part's in the ground. Shari, that's permitted because you're not moving the earth at all, because the top is uncovered and that's the wider part. But mimata lamalo, let's say it's upside down, let's say the wider part is on the bottom and the narrow part is on the top, then says Rav Nachman, it's going to be it's going to be forbidden because you're moving the earth, because like we're saying, the pit that it's in, the narrow is on the top and the wide is on the bottom. So although when you're moving the earth, it's only what's called min outside indirectly, not holding on to the earth itself. You're going to cause it to come out and to move because you only have the wider parts on the bottom. You see that it's asur. So you see holds that tiltum min outside is asur. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman Mahi. He retracted from that teaching. And he did conclude, like he rules over here, like Rabbi Elazar ben Tadai, and that's as we rule halacha l'maisa, tiltum min atzad is going to be mutter, it's going to be permitted, and therefore it's not a contradiction on Rav Nachman. We continue with the next halacha of the Mishnah, that we again, other items that we were talking about that are muktzah items, but you could use it for a permitted utility. One of them is machat shal yad, a hand needle, which is a small type of a needle. Although it's a muktzah thing, it's generally used for stitching clothing, which is forbidden to be done on Shabbos. But you could use it, little bavachlu, to use it to take away a splinter. You're allowed to take out a splinter as long as you're not inevitably going to bleed. You're allowed to use it to take out a splinter. Now, a halacha that's going to relate directly back to this halacha of the Mishnah, so the Gemara says, Shalachu Rava berei the Rabbi Rabbi Yosef. He says, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, let our teacher teach us. Machat shenitel charara, a needle, that the eye of the needle, which is the hole in the needle, which is where you put the thread through it, ay uktzah, or if the point was taken away from this needle, what's the halacha? Can you move it on Shabbos or not? In other words, do we say, is it not a kli anymore, and therefore it's like a muktzah item, or is it still a kli, and then a kli, shemalach to listen, but you could then move it, let's say, bufay, umakayim, you could use it for its a permitted function on Shabbos. So Amalei said to him, we learned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, machat shal yad, why are you allowed to move a hand needle, which is a muktzah item? You could use a little bas hakoitz to take away the splinter in your body. On that he said, what's the difference for a thorn? If there's an eye in the needle, there's no eye. I mean, the whole point of why we're saying you're allowed to move it for is to get at the splinter. So why would it make a difference if there's an eye? For that functionality, it doesn't make a difference. And therefore, of course, you're allowed to move it such a kli, let's say a gufay, to take out the splinter on Shabbos. However, Eisvei, but he asked from the following Mishnah Masechtas Caleb. Mishnah says, Machat shenitel charara uktzah. If you have a needle that the eye or the point was taken away, tahira, it's tahar. It's not a kli anymore. Now, if something's not a kli on Shabbos, it's like intrinsically a muktzah. It's what's called muktzah machmas gufay, rock, all these types of things that have no utility. It's not a kli. It's totally muktzah. So how could you tell me that you're allowed to move such a needle on Shabbos? It's not a kli at all. Like we see, it loses its tumah status. So obviously it's not a kli. So that Abaye says, Tumah Shabbos Karamas. Abaye says, what do you mean? What are you asking from the laws of Tumah and Shabbos? They're two totally different categories. Tumah, what makes something a kli, is kli maisa bi'inon. It has to be a vessel of functioning, which means to say that its original function has to be around. If it loses the eye or the point, you can't use it in its original function, which is to go ahead and need to sew. You need to have a point and to have an eye. But in Shabbos, regarding the laws of Shabbos, what's considered kli? Mida de chazabin, you need something of functionality. And therefore it still functions, it's taking out the thorn, and therefore, says Abaye, it's not going to be muktzah, because Shabbos and Tumah are not the same thing, so therefore it is like the Gemara had answered before, like Rabbi Yosef had said.
What about a stick?
What about a stick?
Would it be okay?
What type?
A stick is like a rock, you know what I'm saying?
Right, so if it has no function at all, so then it's not going to be. But if it has a function, so then what the Gemara is saying right now is that it should be permitted to be moved on Shabbos, because if it has a function. Right, yeah, good point. Depending on the category, Ligabi Tumah, it has to be a kli maisa, has to be of its original function. Regarding Shabbos, like the Gemara's original svar was, like he said, that it could take out the thorn, it could take out the thorn. So who cares if it has an eye and a needle or not? It's still going to be permitted to go ahead and move it. But the Gemara does come back, and Amar Rava, Rabbi says to Abaye, he says, no. Man b'kameis v'shab b'kameis. It's not true. He says, the one who asked the question did ask a good question. Because middle India Tumah lav manohu, and the fact the laws of Tumah, it's not a vessel. So in Shabbos, not lav manohu. Don't tell me an idea, svara of functionality, because someone just pointed out with a stick or a rock. If you say it has a function, but it's not a vessel, it still would be muktzah to move. Now, if you designate it from before Shabbos and you made it to a doorstop or into a weight, that would be different. But the fact that you could use it for something is not going to go ahead and permit it to be moved on Shabbos. It's not a vessel. It's muktzah mechbes kufoy, and therefore Rava doubles down and says, no, it's not true. He says the fact that it lost the eye of the needle, like we see by Tumah, it's not a kli. For Shabbos, it's also not going to be a kli. But another Gemara has Meisvi on Rava from the following brisa. The brisa says, "Machad a needle, bein nekuva, bein she'ein nekuva." Whether there's an eye in the needle or there's no eye in the needle, mutal atalta b'Shabbos. You are permitted to move it on Shabbos. But le'omer nekuva, they didn't say that regarding if it has an eye or not to be considered a vessel more than when it doesn't have an eye. As ele in Tumah bilvad, it was only said regarding the laws of Tumah. Now, as Rashi explains, the Gemara's assumption right now is that with Tumah, it lost the eye of the needle. Where regarding Tumah, it loses the status of a kli. But it's still regarding Shabbos saying you're allowed to move it. So that's not like Rava. Rava says if it's not a vessel regarding Tumah, it's not a vessel regarding Shabbos. He usually clearly in the Brisa that no, for Tumah it's not going to be a vessel, but for Shabbos it will be. So that contradicts Rava. And that says the Gemara, Tigma Abai, Liba de Rava. Abai explained that according to Rava, that's not difficult. Because Begulmi Askina, what we're talking about over here is that it never had the eye of the needle. Gulmi means to say it's an unfinished needle, which is going to be pierced. They're going to make the eye in the needle. Where if it has a hole, so that's already what's called Gemar Malacha. It already finished the creation of the vessel. But if it doesn't have the eye, so it's not yet finished. So that regarding Tumah, it's not a vessel yet because it needs to have Gemar Kli, you have to have finished making the vessel. But regarding moving it on Shabbos, it's going to be permitted because it is fit to go ahead and take out the thorn, as the Gemara explains. Regarding an unfinished needle, it's not like it was a needle and then it broke. It wasn't finished yet. So zimna de mimlechalai, sometimes people change their mind and they don't end up making the eye in the needle. Umashvelu mana, and they make it into a vessel as it is. Yeah, they keep it for taking out thorns for that purpose. So then regarding Shabbos, it is considered as a kli. Because even regarding in general, people would keep it like that. They say, let's leave it like this. We don't need the eye in the needle. But if it had the eye and it lost the eye of the point, then Adam Zerkel the person's going to throw it amongst the garbage heap of the broken piece of metal, and therefore it actually loses the status of kli. That, like Rabbi said, that yes, for Shabbos and Tumah, it's the same thing. If it's ois kli, if it loses the status of a kli regarding Tumah, it will lose the status of a kli regarding Shabbos. Here that the Bryce is saying that there is a difference, it wasn't finished yet. Then yes, some people would make it into a kli, and if it's not batul l'shem kli, and if regarding Shabbos, we could consider it as a kli, quote unquote, that it's not muktzah machmas gufa, that it's just a muktzah of, let's say, machmas iser, and therefore you could move it, let's say, gufa, to go ahead and take out the thorn. Now, related discussion, the Gemara brings us subi nuka regarding smoothing out the order of the limbs when the child is born. Discussion here in Taisus. The way Rashi says is that his limbs become a little bit dislodged, and you have to straighten out the limbs of the child. Could you do that on Shabbos or not? So it's a machlekes. Rav Nachman also says forbidden because it's like mesaking. Just like you're not allowed to go and table things in Shabbos because it's like fixing it. Here also, when you're straightening out the limbs of the child that was born, it's like fixing, which is the problem about taking on. It's called makabapata. So you're finishing off something that's prohibited to be done on Shabbos. Rav Shesha is permitted. Now each one explains the reasoning for his opinion. I'm Rav Nachman. This says, He says, where do I get this from? That it's forbidden to go ahead and straighten out the limbs of the child. Says Tatan, he compares it to Allah later on the Kov Mem Zayin and Alf in the Mishnah. Mishnah says, in Oisnes Gitintam Beis, affect Tavizin b'Shabbos. You can't do what's called induced vomiting on Shabbos. What happens is you drink a liquid and you vomit it up. Now, as Rashi explains, it's not done for medicinal purposes. It's just because people were so gluttony that they want to eat more. So what they do is that they want to empty out their intestines so that they can eat more and drink today, as the Gemara explains later on Parachavas. So they take this certain type of potion to have everything come up, then they go ahead and eat more. Now, although there's no rabbinic decree over here about shchikis samamanim, of grinding the herbs, because like he says, not for refuah, but still it's forbidden to be done. Why? Because of mesakin gav, it's like fixing a person. And therefore, that's the same thing about straightening out the limbs of the child. It's mesak. Yeah. There's definitely discussion regarding that. People have that, chas v'shalom, they have it. Rabbi, I remember, what's his name again? They were from Brooklyn. He deals a lot with eating disorders. What? So there was someone else, Rabbi Goldwasser. So he also had that regarding anorexia, bulimics, regarding people that they vomit up for unhealthy emotional reason regarding. So I think someone's asked them, or it is halachic discussion regarding baltashkas, and the classic saying they say baltashkas the gufa adif. They say the baltashkas the body is greater. Like they say, oh, who's going to finish off the food baltashkas? The place can actually say baltashkas the gufa adif. My body is more baltashkas than finishing off your whatever cream pie or whatever it is. So regarding that, he says, you see that it's forbidden because of masak and gava. So the same thing is regarding the straightening out the limbs of the child. It's going to be forbidden. But Rav Shesher, what would he tell you? He says, no. Hasam over there by the fact of reason, lav urche. It's not the normal way for a functioning of a person. If you're doing it, it's evident that it's for masakin of a gava, fixing a person. Therefore, it's going to be asa. Hach over here by straightening out the limbs of a new baby, urche. It's normal. Meaning, it's like giving someone food and drink. Why don't you say that's masakin? If you think on the molecular level, everything is medicinal. That's why they have all these plant-based and all these functional health medicine. Everything is healing. It's not only a pill that you take. Every food you're taking is also healing, right? But if it's the normal way about how people function, that's not considered as masakin. Here also, if this is the normal way of things are being done, therefore it's not going to be a problem about masakin. A fact of reason is a clearly function or activity you're doing that's to be masakin. Therefore it's going to be us, and if it's not daimi, he says it's not comparable. And then Amr Sheikh says, he says, where do I get my opinion from that it's going to be mutter to do this on Shabbos, straightening out the child? This is good. He compares it to Allah about our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, Machat shal yad, you can take the hand needle little basakoyts to take the thorn. Wait a second. Taking the thorn, you're fixing the person in a non-medicinal way. Because there's no grinding the herbs, but you're taking out the thorn from the body. How are you fixing the person? Obviously, that it's permitted. So too, straightening out the limbs of the child can be permitted. For Nachman, he would tell you no. He says no. Hasam over there by the thorn is not attached to the person. It's just pocket. It's just deposited over there. Taking it out is not fixing the person. Hach over here by the child, blood pocket. There's nothing deposited, and therefore it's more similar to malacha because you're straightening and you're organizing these attached limbs. That's going to be forbidden, and therefore each one had brought their own sources and then said why it's not similar to the other one's interpretation. Why regarding this machlekes of Yisubi Nuka, you're allowed to straighten out the limbs of a newborn baby on Shabbos. Now we continue with the next Mishnah. Again, continue on this theme of muktzah, which is the theme of this parak, Kol HaKelim. Mishnah says, Kanashal Zaysim, the cane of the olives. What is this referring to? Is after they would harvest the olives, which means that you got it off the trees, so that you put it into this vat, and the oil gathers inside the olives over there, so that it's very easy for it to come out. Now they would have this cane that would be used to turn it around and to check the olives, see, did it totally ripen, that it's ready to go put by the press so that you could squeeze out that olive and get some really good olive oil. So regarding this cane of the olives, it depends. If there's this knot at the top, then mekabel tumah. Then it's a kli, because it has some thickness on the top a little bit, so it's going to be mekabel tumah as a vessel. V'mlav, but if it doesn't have, then it's not really similar to be a kli, as the Gemara is going to explain. And a mekabel tumah, it's not going to be mekabel any tumah. This cane is not going to have any tumah. If let's say a dead sheretz, let's say touches it. But says the Mishnah, ben kach nikol b'Shabbos. But be that as it may, whether it has a knot at the end or not, this cane could be moved on Shabbos. It could be used on Shabbos for whatever utility it need. Now, regarding the halacha of tumah, the Gemara says amai. Why did you say that if there's a knot at the end that it's mekabel tumah? Although you're right, having a knot at the end makes it into quote a mana, into a vessel. But there's a different problem. Pshuti kli eitzu, this cane is hollow, and something that's hollow is not meant to receive anything inside of it. Pshuti kli eitzu, when you have a wooden vessel that doesn't have a receptacle, einon mekabel tumah, it does not contract tumah. My time, what's the reason? Because dumi desakpin, and the pasuk when it talks about the laws of tumah has a few different types of materials, one with the other. And when it talks about wooden, it has in the same pasuk as a sackcloth. Now, a sackcloth is obviously only meant to be used to carry things when it's empty or full. It's a receptacle. So a wooden vessel to mekabel tumah, unlike let's say metal, is all mekabel tumah. There's a receptacle. So this cane doesn't have a receptacle. So how's it going to be mekabel tumah? Says the Gemara, Tana Mishmei Reb Nechemi was torn the Bryce name of Reb Nechemi b'shosh mahapach b'zeisim when they turn around the olives. So hayvchei b'roy, but they turn it upside down and they look inside of it, meaning in the cavity of that knot of the cane, there's left a little bit because there's a knot over there. And they see from the oil that's dripping from the olives. That's where they check to see if it's time to press the olives. That is the Kabbalah. That's where it receives in the whole of the cane. Now, if there's no knot on the end, so then there's no oil that's still remaining over there because there's nothing of a knot over there. So it's all hollow. So therefore, it's not meant to receive, and therefore it's going to be pshuti kliyetz, and therefore it's not going to be kabel tumah. But still, the Mishnah says either way you can move it on Shabbos because it's a kli. Why is it a kli? Because you use it to turn around the olives. So even though let's say kli shemalach le'isser, but be that as it may, it could be moved, or it could be even kli shemalach le'heter, because what's the problem? The point is, it's a kli, and you could use it on Shabbos, but the only thing is regarding tumah, that's what we said. If there's a knot, like you see the pictures trying to illustrate over here, you have this olive over here on the knot at the end, so they'll check to see, is it ready? They'll pick it up and they go, okay. But if there's no knot, so it's just a stick, there's no way of picking up, it's totally hollow, and therefore it's not going to be mekabel tumah. Continuing the halacha, the next Mishnah, again, continuing on the theme of muktzah, now we're talking about muktzah, what's called machmas chasar and kiss. Very expensive items, which, like we mentioned before, according to the most opinions, they're going to be muktzah in all situations. Yisiem, he says, kol hakel niton, he says, all vessels can be moved on Shabbos, besides two exceptions. Chutz min hameser hagavul, except for the large saw, which is used, let's say, chop beans. V'yeset shel machresha, and the peg of what's used for plowing, which is a large vessel that's made like a knife, which has it digs into the furrows, what's called the coulter. But people are very particular about these two types of vessels. They designate a place for it because it has no function for anything else. Those two things are muktzah, machmas, chasar, and kiss, and therefore everything else can be moved besides these things. Now, the Gemara actually brings a whole list of different things that also have the same status. Amar of Nachman says, "Hi uchla de katri." The launder is uchla. What's uchla? So Rashi brings two interpretations. It was a copper vessel that was made like a sieve, which had many little holes, and the launderers would use it. They would put on top of the garment, and they would pour water, let's say, on that sieve type of sheet, and it would just sprinkle onto the garment some water. Or some say actually that they would have coals beneath this uchla, and the garments would be on top of this sieve. So it would have what's called goimer. Mugmer, what they would do is they would have the coals go through the holes, and you buy this clothing, go to the suit store, it has a good smell. That would be from, they would put incense beneath this. That's what the launderers would do this. But be that as it may, it's some type of a launderer's tool. Says Rav Nachman, it's ki yeser shel machresha dami, has the same halacha as the halacha of a Mishnah, of the peg of the plow, which again, people are particular about. It's a very sensitive tool, and therefore it's going to be muktzah because of machmas chasar and kiss. A similar case of our bias is charba de ushkafi. Charba de ushkafi is the knife of the tanners, and the sakina de ashkavta, which is the knife of the butcher, v'chatzina de nagri, and the carpenter's adzi, which is another type of a tool of a carpenter. All of them are kriyeset shamachreshet, and they're all like this knife of the plowing, because again, the people are particular about it because they could get ruined very quickly, and people therefore set it aside. They don't want anyone touching it. Therefore, that's going to be muktzah machmas chasar kiz. That's going to be totally muktzah. Now, Tarabban, the Gemara now introduces what's the source, what's the etiology of this whole prohibition of muktzah. Says the Gemara like this: originally they said shleishi came to Tom Shabbos. In the beginning, they said only 3 vessels can be moved on Shabbos and nothing else. As the Gemara later on is going to explain, in the days of Nechemi Mechalia in the second Beis Hamikdash, they made a gzera moving every kli on Shabbos because they wanted to make a fence to be stringent in the prohibitions of Shabbos because people were being very lenient regarding the laws of Shabbos. And so originally they said only 3 kelim could be moved. What are those 3? Maktu shel devela, some type of a zemel, some type of a knife, which are used to cut the dried figs. V'zuama lister and shakadera, and the foam scooper of the pot, which is a large spoon that they use to scoop off the foam on the top of the pot. And v'saka gitana shal gabe shulchan, and a small knife that's put on the table, meaning that you use the regular knife they use to cut bread, to cut meat, and all types of foods, because since those are the things that are commonly used, those are the 3 vessels that are permitted. Now, Tais actually points out they're only mentioning vessels that don't have a receptacle, because Tais is obvious that cups and bowls and spoons, all those things they were allowed to move. It's not like they couldn't use anything, they were using their hands. It just means, besides the regular stuff, these 3 things were permitted, but everything else was forbidden to be moved. Now, but hitiru, then they permitted more things when they saw people were starting to be a little bit more careful in the laws of Shabbos. V'chazr b'tir, and this is very important, the words that we're saying over here. Hitiru is one time. Then v'chazr b'tir, then again when they saw people were a little more careful, they permitted a little bit more things. V'chazr b'tir, and again then later on when they saw people were careful, again they start permitting a little bit more things. Sounds like phase 1, phase 2 should be familiar for anyone going through COVID. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And later on the Gemara explains like what are all these permitted, then permitting. Achamru, until finally they said, when they permitted again everything, until they said, Kol came to Tom Shabbos. Actually, all vessels can be moved on Shabbos. As we say in our Mishnah, Chutz min mesagol, except for the large saw, the Yesed Shemachreisham, and the knife of the plow. So the Gemara has two interpretations. What does this mean? My hitiru, which count the numbers. What is it that permitted phase 1? V'chazer b'tir, then they permitted phase 2. V'chazer b'tir, then they permitted phase 3. And then actually it's on Ad She'amr, which is really in a sense phase 4. What are these phases that they had regarding permitting Kalim, because they had first made a blanket issur. Everyone that said quarantine, there's no muktzah, no Kalim can be moved on Shabbos. But then they permitted. What was the phases? So I'm Abai, interpretation number 1. He says, okay, first they permitted to be moved. Davar, something that its primary utility is shemalachtai, that its function on the weekday is laheter. Is generally for something that's permitted to be done on Shabbos. So they permitted to move that vessel l'tzayrech gufay. If you're using it for a permitted function for the vessel itself, but not l'tzayrech mekayma. Not, let's say, it's meaning you want to move it only for, let's say, cracking open a nut, which is permitted function to use to do on Shabbos. But you can't move, let's say, the hammer, let's say, because you need the place on the Shabbos, so you need to put down the plate. That they didn't permit yet. First they permitted only, not even a hammer, right? We're talking about
a nutcracker.
Yeah, but we're not even talking about, exactly, like a nutcracker. Something that's permitted function, that, let's say, something like a nutcracker. A permitted function, you're allowed to move it for itself to crack open nuts. That was phase 1. Then, v'chazer b'tira. Then they went and permitted these things themselves, which is davar shalach l'heter, which they permitted to have a vessel on Shabbos, l'tzarech mekayim, to use it for its place. If it's taking a place of something where you need the place, you let them move it away. Let's say you need something behind it, or you need whatever it is. Then phase 3 was v'chaz v'tir davar shalach l'isser. Then they permitted even something that's, let's say, a blacksmith's hammer, l'tzarech gufa in, to go ahead and use it if you need it for on Shabbos for a permitted function for itself. But l'tzarech mekayim l'ay. But they did not permit it if you just need its place. So according to this interpretation, they didn't allow kli shalach l'isser regarding l'tzarech mekayim. They only allowed it for l'tzarech gufa. Now, so those are the 3 stages. But still, b'yodei achasin, they only let you move something that could be moved with one hand. B'shtei yodei, when it's a very large thing, then lay. Ad sha'ama, that's what the Brayso concludes, until they said that kol ha'kelim, all these vessels that we mentioned, they are nitalim b'Shabbos, they can be moved on Shabbos. They're b'shtei yadayim, even if it needs 2 hands to move it. But except for the large saw, which that wasn't permitted, not l'tzarech gufa, not l'tzarech mekayim, because that's what muktzah machmas chazar kiss. Now, Abaye, Rashi just points out one important thing. Abaye, who's saying this interpretation, obviously retracted to Rabbah that we mentioned earlier regarding the blacksmith's hammer, because Abaye was discussing that, and he was asking on Rabbah, which it sounds like he was going like Rabbi Huda holds kli shalach l'isser cannot be moved even l'tzarech gufa mekayim. He obviously retracted to Rabbah and holds that a kli shalach l'isser is allowed to be moved l'tzarech gufa, like he's interpreting over here that was actually the trilogy, the evolution of the halacha of permitting that of muktzah, which like we see over here on the slide, the kli shalach l'heter they permitted l'tzarech gufa l'tzarech mekayim. Kli shalach l'isser they ended up permitting in stage 3 l'tzarech gufa even a large item, but not l'tzarech mekayim. That's interpretation of Abaye. But on that, Rabbi says he doesn't like Abaye's interpretation. He says, Mechti, let's see. When you're saying that for a purpose, hitiru they permitted the first time around. Katani it says they permitted. So mali tzarech gufa, what would be the difference if you need it for itself as a function? Mali tzarech mekayim, what would be the difference if you need its place? Because Rava understands that they're both considered a need, a necessity. He doesn't differentiate regarding the tzarech gufa and tzarech mekayim. He understands if you're letting a person use, let's say, something for itself, you let it use it for its place too. So Elam Rava, he gives a different, more permitted, more lenient interpretation of the evolution. He says, hitiru, stage 1 that they permitted was davar shalach l'heter, something that's a permitted utility, like we said, a nutcracker. Be'el tzarech gufa, be'el tzarech mekayim. Stage 1 actually let for itself or for its place. V'chaz v'tira, stage 2 was mechama letzel, to take from the sun to the shade, which you don't need it right now. Not for itself, not for its place. You're just concerned it might get ruined in the sun. This is actually, as we rule, like a permitted thing, you're allowed to move it on Shabbos. A regular spoon or a fork, all these different things, you're allowed to move it even if it's not l'tzarech gufa mekayim. V'chaz v'tira, then stage 3 was they permitted davar shalach l'isser, something that's forbidden to be used generally for a Shabbos activity, but if you're using l'tzarech gufa, l'tzarech mekayim in, which again, as we rule the halacha l'maisa, for itself or for its place, you're allowed to move it, because again, Rabbi considers that the same thing. But if you're moving it from the sun to the shade, that you're not allowed to move it because it's a kli shalach l'isser. Now, but for dying, still, if it was something that could be done with one person, that they let. But if it needs 2 persons to carry, that they didn't let. Until they said, and this was the last heter, Kala kelim, all the vessels, even if they're very large, and he told him Shabbos can be moved on Shabbos, even if it needs 2 people. But again, like we explained, that if it's a kli shamachti leheter, then you can move even from the sun to the shade. A kli shamachti le'iser can be moved to gufa or to mekaimai. That's where he disagrees with Abaya, which actually, as we rule, halacha l'maisa, kli shamachti leheter can be moved for all purposes. Some say if you have no intention at all, even that maybe you can't. But mecham l'tzel you could. But a kli shamachti le'iser, you could move it if it let's say gufa, you want to use it for a permitted function on Shabbos, or even let's say mekaimai, or even if it's taking up the place. Now, Isra Abaya, however, Abaya asks on Rava from the following brisa. The brisa says meducha, a mortar, im yesh shum, if there, as we mentioned this brisa earlier on this daf, if there's some garlic inside of it, metal so then you can move it. If there's no garlic, a metal you're not going to move it. So now Abai is asking, according to me, it makes sense that you can't move it because it's a kli mishlach le'iser, because I'm telling you the brisa toma letzarech mekaymer, which Abai says the conclusion was that you're not going to move a kli mishlach le'iser mekaymer. But according to you, why can't you move it? You says a kli mishlach le'iser can be moved whether letzarech chuv or letzarech mekaymer. So Abai says, "Hag my skill. What are we talking about? Is mecham letzel." The reason why you can't move it is because you want to take it from the sun to the shade. Even according to Rava, a kli mishlach le'iser, as we rule halacha l'maisa, cannot be moved mecham letzel. A similar question Esvei asked on Rava from the following brisa. The brisa says, and we quoted this also previously, Bishav and Bisham Misel both agree regarding the pestle, regarding that piece that grinds the something in the mortar. Shem Katzav Labas, we already used it to grind to chop the meat in it on Yom Tov. Sha'asal Tal you're not allowed to move it. Why? That's a Klish Makdele Isser. According to Rava, you're allowed to move it. L'tzarech Kufa, L'tzarech Mekamer. Says the Gemara, Hakam Yos, it's Macham L'tzel. It's from the sun to the shade, and therefore you can't move it. Now the Gemara says that actually, to explain, as we had mentioned earlier, the hishtalshlus of the halachas of muktzah, where it starts from. Amr B'chanin says, "B'mei Nechemia ben Chachalya." In days of Nechemia ben Chachalya, Nishnus Mishnazu, this Mishnah was taught that we mentioned earlier. We said originally they only let 3 kelim to be moved on Shabbos, nothing else, because they were disgracing the Shabbos. Like it says the pasuk in Sefer Nechemia. It says by Yom Ha'hema Re'isa B'Yehuda. In those days I saw in Judea. Derchim Gisis b'Shabbos, they were stepping in the presses on Shabbos. Umavin Haremas, they were bringing the sheaves on Shabbos. Again, they were disgracing it. Therefore, they said to make it as a geder, as a fence, they made the Isser of Muktzah. Now, one last important qualification for today's daf. The Gemara says, Amr B'Lazar, he says that konin, regarding the tubes, we'll explain exactly what these cases are in a moment, umaklis and the sticks, and glustra, the knob, umeducha, and the mortar, which these are all mishnayos, as the Gemara is going to explain, Kulan Kaidim Ataras Kalim, or they were all before the last permissibility of the vessels, then Nishna they were taught. Meaning, as we explained just before, we said originally they made all Kalim forbidden. Klishamach Lahet, the Klishamach Laisir, they're all forbidden. At the end, ultimately, they ended up permitting most vessels, according to Abaya, if it's L'tzarech Gufa, according to Rava, even if it's L'tzarech Mekaimai. But although we're going to bring Mishnayos that seem to say that they're forbidden, the Gemara is already preempting and saying that they were taught, those Mishnayos, were before they were later retracted and permitted. And therefore that's why they're forbidden. What are they? So Kanan, that of the tubes, it's not like the Mishnah says this Menachos. It says, Loi Sidra HaKanan, not the organizing of the tubes that they used to put in the order of the Lechem Apanim, on the Shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, between every challah, which they had rows of 6 going up, to separate, to put ear between them that it shouldn't get moldy. So the organizing the tubes and below netilas is not the taking from the old order of the shulchan, which they used to take this and take the old ones and put the new ones on Shabbos. Taking the tubes or putting on the tubes is not deiches Shabbos, does not override the Shabbos. Rather, what they used to do is they used to come on Erev Shabbos, they would take away the tubes, and the next day they would take away the old bread from the previous week. They would put on the new bread without tubes, and once the Shabbos they would come in and they would put the tubes between them so that it shouldn't get moldy till the next Shabbos. And that's what the Gemara is coming to say. This Mishnah was taught before the first heter that they did, before phase 1. Because this is a tube, is a klishul nachta leheter. It's done for a permitted food thing. And yet they were forbidden to do it even though it's l'tzarech gufay. Because that's before phase 1. And therefore, it was forbidden. Now, Tosa points out, although it's only Issur D'Rabbanan, but we find many Issur D'Rabbanan, which Muktzah is only Issur D'Rabbanan. Find many Issur D'Rabbanan in the Beis HaMikdash, like here, because they're Machal Shabbos, so therefore it applied even in the Beis HaMikdash. But again, this was taught before even phase 1 of the quarantine of the items, and therefore, even though it's a Klishah Mach Lahet L'Tzarech Gufay, which everyone takes for granted you're allowed to move on Shabbos, they said you're not allowed to move on Shabbos. What's the case of Maklis? What's the case of the sticks? This is not like in the Mishnah Masechet Pesachim. Maklis Dakin, Chalok, and Hayusham. They had these smooth and thin sticks that they had over there in the Azar in the courtyard when Pesach falls out to be in the regular 14th during the weekday, that Umanichal Kseifa Val Kesef Chaver, they would put it on his own shoulder and his friend's shoulder, V'toilo Mafshid, and then they would hang it and then skin the animal that way, because sometimes they didn't have enough hooks there. There were so many people there doing the Korban Pesach, so you had these sticks that you could put on your shoulder and your friend's shoulder and skin it that way. Now, on that Rabbi Lazar Eimer, he says, our boss of Shachalis b'Shabbos says that the 14th of Nisan falls on Shabbos, so again, you're limited with the laws of Shabbos. So Maniach, as you continue to have Kov Chavdal Menal, Yadoy al Kesef Chaver, you have to put your hand on your friend's shoulder, V'yad Chaver al Kesefa, and his friend's going to put his hand on your shoulder, because you're not using the sticks here on Shabbos, even though it's a Klish Machtel Heter. You're doing it for permitted, it's a stick, like we mentioned before, it's something that has a permitted function, that you can use it on Shabbos. Still, you can't use the stick, but you have to hang it from the hands and skin it that way. Why? Because, like we said, this was taught before phase 1, when you have a Klish Gufa that wasn't permitted yet. At that point, they said everything's awesome besides these 3 vessels that we had initially permitted. What's the case of Glustra B'Nab? There's not a glimmers to Maset this Kalim. Neger Sheyesh Beresha Glustra. There's a bolt that's used to close doors. That the end has this type of it's where it's thick there at the end, and you could use it to grind garlic, where that's the bolt that's at the end, which you use to close the door. Rabbi Shloimy says, you could drag the bolt from this opening, and you could put on your friend's door on Shabbos. Now, although this is L'tzar Gufay, which is to put on your friend's door and to lock it with that, which is has a permitted function, Shabbos, not doing any baina or anything, this and that. Still, we said you could only take it off your entryway by dragging it, but to move it in a regular way, that you can't. Even though it's a klish mlachta leheter, because again, it's not a forbidden function. You're just putting something to block the door from being open. Still, we see another move l'tzarech gufay. Again, this is what you see, that even though it's a klish mlachta leheter, you couldn't even do it l'tzarech gufay because it was before they started permitting things. Now, Rabbi he actually says harika kolakelim. It's like old vessels. Umital the could be moved in the chatz, which Taisus wonders what do you mean. This is you telling me before phase 1. All kelim are actually forbidden. So he says, no, you could say what he means kolakelim, he means like cups and bowls, which could be permitted. Here also it's a permitted thing, even like a cup and a bowl, that you can move it, even before it was phase 1, even in the quarantine, you're allowed to go and move it. The last case, meducha, of the mortar, which without the garlic, is hadaman, like we said before, which as Rashi points out, although the Gemara had answered for Rav, it's told take it from the sun to the shade, or buy it for tzerech mekaymai, Rashi says that's a contrived, that's a difficult answer. Rather, it makes more sense to say the reason why you can't move the mortar without the garlic, even though you're taking it l'tzarech gufay, is because it was before the kelim were permitted. So if it's a klisha machtel isra, like a mortar, although ultimately we do say it's permitted to be moved, whether it's l'tzarech gufay or l'tzarech mekaymai, like Rabbi says, but that was before we had permitted anything, and that's why these Mishayos, just to understand that the Gemara gives that clause to say that that's why you couldn't go ahead and move it before that point of time, because it wasn't permitted yet. Some ideas we discussed in today's Daf, in Shabbos Daf Kuf Chav Gimel, we had a machlokes and explained the halacha of the Mishnah regarding the hammer that could be used to crack open the nuts. Now, we had one interpretation, if that's a klisha machtel hatter, that was Rabbi Yehuda. He says, yeah, only if it's a nut cracker you can move it on Shabbos. Or like Rabbi says, no, even if it's a klisha machtel isser, it's that of a blacksmith, yeah, but you could use the tzayich, gufay, or makaymet to go ahead and use it to crack open the nuts. Now, the thing is, we had a brisa that sounded like it was usser, that Rabbi says, yeah, because that's like Rabbi Nechemia. Because Rabbi Nechemia says if it's not for its designated function, you can't use it. And the Mishnah Masechtas Beis that also made it sound like it's forbidden, again, not like Rava, is because those are things that you designate a place for them. They're muktzah, they're very expensive, therefore, because of what we call, as we're going to discuss later on, a chasar kiss. But in general, he still sticks to his opinion as actually rule halacha l'maisa that klisha machtel isser is permitted. Then we have two more opinions of what type of a hammer we're talking about. Even a hammer of a goldsmith, which is even a little bit more sensitive, even that you're allowed to move on Shabbos for the cracking open the nuts. And we have a fourth interpretation, even that in the spices. But the third opinion holds that no, spices is more particular because it's more sensitive, and that would be considered muktzah, and you wouldn't be able to use a l'tzarech gufay of, let's say, cracking open a nut on Shabbos. There are machlekes if it's permitted to do what's called tiltum and atzad, and the Gemara ultimately ruled that yes, it is permitted to go ahead and move a muktzah item indirectly by taking out something, and it's going to have to move the straw. That's okay because you're not moving it directly. Let me explain the halacha of the Mishnah. We said a hand needle, you're allowed to move it. Why are you allowed to move it? It's a muktzah item. It's a klisha machtel isser. You could use it to take the thorn, which is a permitted function on Shabbos. Then we said, what's with it? Let's say it's a needle that lost the eye or the point. So we said, yeah, you're allowed to move it because there's no difference in functionality regarding taking the thorn. I don't care if there's an eye in the needle to take out the thorn. The other opinion says, no, it's forbidden because, no, ultimately, we find it's not a kli, as we find the laws of Tumah, if it doesn't have the eye or the point. Here also, it's muktzah machmas gufay, it's not a kli at all, even though you could use it for a permitted function, like a rock on Shabbos, you can't use it even for a permitted function. And we do find the Bryce that does differentiate regarding the laws of Tumah and of Shabbos. Yes, that's only by Gulmei Kli. If it wasn't finished off, yet for Shabbos, we consider Kli. Whereas if it was lost, the needle, or the eye, or the point, then it's thrown in the garbage heap or the metals, then we're going to say it's not a Kli, then you can't move it. But you could say a Chilik if it wasn't finished yet, and therefore it wouldn't be difficult on Rabbi who says that if it's not a Kli Lagabi Tumah, it's not going to be a Kli regarding the laws of Shabbos. Then we had a machlekes regarding, let's say, straightening out the limbs of a new infant on Shabbos. One opinion held it's also. Why is it also? Like we find the Mishnah later, Afik the Wiesen, you vomit up the food, that's forbidden to be done on Shabbos because it's Masak and Gabi. Here also it's Masak and Gabi, you're fixing the child. The other opinion says no. There it's not the normal way of functioning. So therefore it's directly a tick and Gabi. Here it's normal way. Like when you eat and drink, it's also Masak and Gabi. We don't consider that forbidden to be done on Shabbos. And therefore it wouldn't be us. The opinion who says it's mutter, his source is like we find the Mishnah, in our Mishnah, that says you're allowed to take out the thorn. Masak and Gabi, you see it's not a problem. The other one says no. Yeah, Masak and Gabi. The thorn is just deposited. Here it's not deposited. It's more similar to be a malacha, and therefore be forbidden to be done on Shabbos. That was the machlekes regarding Yesubah Yenuka. Then we had the next Mishnah which spoke about the cane of the olives that they use to move around the vat of the olives. So we said if there's a knot on the end, so then it's makabel tumah, and if not, it's not makabel tumah. We said regarding Shabbos, either way, it's used. It's for a function of permitted of Shabbos. Never can be moved. So we can ultimately explain that it's not pshut to kliyates, even if it has a knot at the end, because when they would pick up the olives, they would pick it up and see is it ready to be squeezed, and therefore it has a clay kibul, and therefore it's going to be makabel tumah. And regarding Shabbos, it's always usable on Shabbos. Then we have the Mishnah that said Rabbi Yisi holds old vessels could be moved except for two. One is the large soul, one is Yesir Shemachrisha, because that's again what's called Muktzamach Chasar Kis, that does not have the dispensation of what we call Tzarech Gufa, Tzarech B'Koyim. Then we said similar vessels, these are all things that you're particular about, so we said Yumakatsa B'Yadayim, those are things that are going to be Muktzah. And the Gemara explains what originally the evolution of this was, that originally they only permitted Gimel Kalim. They said everything's us to be moved. Again, Taisa says bowls and all those different things, of course, are permitted, but everything else is said forbidden, except for three. They had the Mitzayah Shal Devel, which is the knife to cut the dried figs, the foam scooper of the pot, and the small little knife that you keep on the table. Then, Hitiru, V'chazra V'hitiru, stage 1, stage 2, V'chazra V'hitiru, stage 3, then they permitted, and then really, like in a way, stage 4, until they said all vessels can be moved except for those two of the Mishnah. Now, what does that mean? What were the stages? So, like we said, the first quarantine, Abai says, was that everything was us. Then, stage 1, they permitted Klish Malach Leheter, L'tzarech Gufa. Stage 2 was then L'tzarech Mekaymer. Stage 3 was even Klish Malach Le'isr, L'tzarech Gufa. But again, it was only if it could be moved with one hand, until they said even if you move with two hands. Rava says stage 1 was Klish Malach Leheter, L'tzarech Gufa and Mekaymer. Stage 2 was even Macham L'tzel, and we rule like this, you're allowed to move it even from the sun to the shade. Stage 3 was Klish Malach Le'isr, L'tzarech Gufa and Mekaymer, again as we rule like that too, until they said even if it could be moved by two people. And the Bryces that said it's Usr, it's not the Began Rava, because Tuma Macham L'tzel, Klish Malach Le'isr cannot be moved from the sun to the shade. And then we said that the way the Issa Muktzah started was in the days of Nehemiah, in the second base of Mikdash, who they were very lean in the laws of Shabbos, so they made the Issa of Muktzah. But we said that there were many Mishnayos that were taught before they permitted anything, when it was still Usr, and those are the tubes of the Lechem Apanim, the sticks by the Karm Pesach, which they didn't let move, and Glustra, which is the knot on the end of the bolt, which you said you could only drag it. These are all Kli Shemalachtai Leheter and the L'tzarech Gufay. And still we said that it's usher because that was before stage 1 when all the quarantine was usher for the vessels. And then you had also the last case of the mortar without any garlic inside of it. That we said even L'tzarech Gufa is going to be usher. Again, that's because that's a Klish after L'isser. But again, we rule that it's permitted according to all interpretation. But the reason why it was usher is because it was before they permitted any of the taim. Therefore they said they were usher, but really they're all permitted to be done after the Chazar Tir. Thank you to any time for hosting us.